I suppose before we dive into the set agenda for the month, it's worthwhile touching base with a couple of rolling news stories. The first one is linked with Australian bushfires, which have been raging for a couple of months now, it seems. And well, first of all, I guess news of damage to ancient rock art, specifically in this instance at Carnarvon Gorge, destroyed after a walkway exploded during a bushfire. But this is really a touchstone for various news of damage done to Aboriginal sites, rock art, and other forms of history as well, and heritage and culture across the affected areas. Uh, uh, it's interesting, isn't it? Because on the one hand, you do have some people saying that this is a larger version of something that happens all the time in Australia in terms of bushfires are a thing. But the scale and the potential cultural cost is, well, it gives you pause for thought, shall we say, doesn't it?
I think so. I mean, it's absolutely right to say that. I mean, anywhere where there are things that can burn, whether it's grass or trees or whatever, then there will be burns of various kinds. And in fact, you know, it's a cultural event in some cultures to stage a controlled burn, a deliberate burn to
Hmm.
clear land or for other purposes. So yes, it's a complex area. At the same time, I think the what's been happening in Australia over the last couple of months has really resonated in the context of the climate change emergency,
Mm.
which is now widely recognised and pretty broadly accepted.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's seen as a canary in the coal mine.
Mm.
That these fires have been so intense, running for so long, and starting so early in the traditional bushfire season.
Mm.
Um, I think the other thing I think you need to bear in mind with the issue of cultural heritage in the context of the fires is that uh, it's while the cultural heritage is part of a wider ecological disaster, if you
Hmm.
like,
Hmm.
and shows if we needed reminding that cultural heritage is part of the wider environment and that really archaeologists should be and heritage people, conservation people should be working together with our colleagues in the natural environment community, because this is a shared problem and we're not, it's difficult enough to get politicians to engage with this and to actually take action, meaningful action over a meaningful time scale.
Hmm.
So uh, it's it's a shared human problem. It's not just a heritage problem.
No, of course. And also, I should say the reason why I mentioned the heritage and cultural aspect is because that's obviously our stated realm of interest and inquiry.
Of
Of
course,
course,
yeah.
there's a very real human cost to this sort of these sorts of mass fires, and a very real cultural cost in terms of current culture. You know, families and
Yeah.
economy and this kind of thing. But a little spark of good news from this morning, at least. There's reports that the East Coast is predicted to receive widespread falls of at least 25 to 100 millimeters of rain in parts. It looks like like fire zone, all fire zones will at least get some rainfall in the coming weeks, said a spokesman, and that even many of the ongoing fires to the west of Sydney and down towards the south coast in East Gippsland, will also get some rainfall. So some respite is also on the horizon for this as well, which
Which
is good.
obviously has to be good news.
Yeah.
No, I'm just. I think I suspect. This is our first watching brief of the new year, as you said at the in the introduction. I think we're going to be returning more and more to the idea that cultural heritage and archaeology are part of a wider environmental movement.
Mm.
I think if we don't do that, then archaeology's got a problem.
Yeah. No, I
But
agree.
I suspect that's the direction. I suspect that's going to be the direction of travel over the next period of time, not necessarily just this year.
Indeed, and actually, well, there's something that we'll touch on that in our first full segment of the month
Yeah.
in a moment. The second thing I just wanted to bring to your attention as a rolling news, sort of breaking news element, is well, specifically, it comes in the form of a petition, but this is actually what was sent to you via an email this morning, essentially from a colleague.
Shall I just introduce it very quickly? Because
Hmm.
I think this is a story to watch.
Hmm.
It's a story that broke this morning on the BritArc Archaeological Forum, which has been running for years now. It's one of the oldest internet forums for UK archaeologists.
Sorry, I smirk because I briefly joined it and then I had to leave because some of the conversations on there are interesting to say the least.
Because somebody had to do it, I stuck with it. But okay, yeah, that's a whole other story.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah.
But it's moderated by the Council for British Archaeology, in fact.
Sort of.
Sort of. Well, yes. Yes. We won't go there now. Where we will go is the story that broke just this morning to subscribers to the forum. It's a petition that has sprung up in Gloucestershire in the southwest of the UK. It's to do with a development archaeology site at a place called Box Road in Dursley, in Gloucestershire, where Bovis Estates are building a housing estate.
Hmm.
Nothing new there. There's a lot of housing going on in rural areas at the moment, and Bovis is one of the big developers. As is the way in British archaeology, Thames Valley Archaeology have been doing an excavation ahead of the construction, and they've come up with what looks, from the photograph that's been published on the petition, a pretty well preserved Roman. Well, it's been called variously a villa or a bathhouse. What I'm looking at looks almost certainly like the bathhouse wing of perhaps a small villa.
Well, yeah, we can see a
Yeah, I
sort
mean,
of
it
a
looks like there's a plunge pool. There's two rooms with a hypercourse by the look of
yeah.
it, or one or two rooms with a
So it's a
hypercourse.
bathhouse with some other elements that we can see. Yeah, that's about it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But quite substantial remains, quite well preserved by the look of it.
Hmm.
The row is over the fact that Bovis had been given planning permission for this estate. The Villa Bathhouse sits underneath some of the houses they plan to build, and the allegation is that the county council have told Bovis that the villa is not worthy of preservation in situ, which would normally be the case
Oh,
if
okay.
something this substantial turned up, or would often be the case, I should say.
Hmm.
There is also an allegation on the petition, and we'll link to the petition so our viewer can read it. There is an allegation that Historic England, which is the national regulator, would be in for thousands of pounds worth of compensation to Bovis if they're not allowed to build their houses on that particular part of the site.
Hmm.
Obviously, if a couple of houses have to be left out because this thing is going to be preserved in situ, then they have to redesign the scheme to either put those houses somewhere else or redo the finances, because obviously each house is an element of the profit on the scheme.
Hmm.
That is a pretty significant allegation, because, again, it suggests a number of things, but one in particular, which is that the desktop study and the other work that was done as part of the planning application basically got it wrong, and that this building was either missed or was assessed as being of far less significance than it actually could be, and in fact certainly of far less significance to the local community, because this petition has come from the local community, who see it as their villa, their bathhouse, and they want it preserved. There's north of 2,000 signatures at the moment, and the petition only started last night and hasn't had a huge amount of publicity outside of the area until now.
No.
So this is going to be one to watch, I think, because it is very possible that this has slipped through various gaps in the planning system, and this is something that shouldn't have happened.
No, indeed, something that shouldn't have happened, but also at the same time, at this point, no reason to presume that there was any, anyone was turning a deliberately deliberate blind eye to
No,
it. No, no,
no.
exactly.
Oh no,
Um,
no. Always favour the cock up rather than conspiracy theory,
yeah,
which
precisely.
is not to say that subsequently that we might not find one, but there is absolutely no evidence of that at the moment. I hasten to add.
Or as my uncle used to say, brown trousers rather than brown envelopes.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes, Millard.
yeah. So someone pooped the bed.
Mrs. Sue Grabbit and Run have no reason to get involved at this stage.
Exactly. Okay. So yes, we'll keep an eye on those, and obviously our continued well wishes to Australia as well.
Indeed, absolutely.